Hey guys, welcome to another video. Today we're going to be making another tier list, this time for Star Wars The Clone Wars. I'm making a tier list for all the arcs, the individual episodes that don't fall into those arcs, and for the movie. I actually created my own template on Tier Maker for this because I was looking at the various ones that were already there, and most of them had errors, were missing an arc, or some of the arcs weren't delineated correctly. So I found a useful Reddit post, which will be linked on the template I created. And thank you to that Reddit user for doing that. And using that post, I created my own tier list. So yeah, as I've mentioned before in some of my other videos, I'm a big Star Wars fan, so I've kind of had this idea on the back burner for quite some time, and I'm really excited to get into it, so let's start. Alright, so here we are on our tier list, and I actually edited all these photos myself so that it'd be easier for you guys to see which arcs are where, because, sometimes by the photos you can't really tell. Oh, and I should definitely mention, obviously, in case you haven't figured it out, spoilers ahead, I'm just going to be talking about these freely. So let's get started with corruption, I guess. We'll just go in order of how they are in this picture thingy here. Alright, so honestly, I think this is a B tier arc. This is the one where Ahsoka goes to Mandalore, and they kind of uncover that ring of smugglers, smuggling in supplies, because Mandalore is being blockaded or whatever. It's not really something I care to watch again, but it's alright, it's B tier, and I think B tier is going to be the things where you're like, that's not bad, but it's also nothing I really want to watch again, whereas C tier is also you don't want to watch it again, and it's not horrible, but you would say it's on the lower end, it's kind of bad. So, like painfully average, kind of things like that, right? Deception is A tier simply because holy shit, like the idea of Obi-Wan, getting plastic surgery for himself and then going undercover and faking his own death. It's just such a wacky idea. I love the ballsiness of it. So it's gonna get an A tier for ballsiness. Dooku captured. Honestly, I don't really remember this arc that much. I do. It has some really funny lines between Anakin and Obi-Wan and Dooku. So I think I'm gonna say B tier, because I don't remember it too much. Droid arcs, D, horrible. D Squad, Rancor Pit, I hate that arc. I recently rewatched the Clone Wars, and I actually skipped a few episodes in that. It was just so boring. There's literally some episodes where they're walking through an empty desert, so it's like there's nothing even on screen to be entertained by. Okay, so Evil Plans is the one where Cad Bane, or whatever, abducts C-3PO and R2-D2. And, Cad Bane is cool and everything, but he's not going to save it from a D tier. Any of the arcs, or this is a single episode in this case, where the droids are the main focus, tend to be pretty awful, in my opinion. So, yeah, D tier for that one, for sure. Finale, obviously S tier. Just the culmination of 10 years, at least probably for me, since I started watching this in middle school. It was on a 6-year break or whatever. So, this is the thing that this arc had everything that we were always talking about, what's going to happen in Order 66. Just the fact that this arc, actually showed that is something in of itself, because, probably a lot of people, including myself, expected maybe Order 66 to not even be covered in the show. Just the fact that it intersects with episode 3, just so amazing. Really good way for Ahsoka to finish in the show as well as Rex, of course. And also the fight with Maul, Ahsoka's fight with Maul, probably one of the best fights in the series, because it's, and by the series I mean Clone Wars, because it's actually motion capped rather than keyframe animated, so just looks fucking amazing. I love this arc so much. Friend in Need is, I think it's an individual episode. I'm gonna say this is B tier because it has some Ahsoka characterization, but overall a little bit forgettable, but not bad. Gone with the Trace. Okay, so this one is C tier. People give this one a really bad rap. I'm sure many people would put it in D or Rancor Pit, but the real issue is that it was in season 7, and that was really unfortunate because this is a slow arc, and it doesn't really add too much to the whole Star Wars narrative compared to the rest. And in that way you can kind of see it as like wasting time in a arc where you really shouldn't have had like arcs that aren't super important, right? Like you should have had in season 7 it should have all been very impactful A tier type stuff, right? At least Geonosis. So this is a Senate spy. This is where there's the droid factory as well. All of that is covered. This is like a huge arc. It's like 5 episodes. I honestly love this arc for the episode landing at Point Rain. Like it's just pure Star Wars like war, and I think that's just really cool. I love, same reason I liked Rogue One. I just love when you can see like this is just like pure Clone Wars, that episode. Some of the other droid factory is like a B tier if you were to move that into a separate arc, and the worms one is C tier. Because the worms episode, I mean, it's cool that I guess we have brain controlling worms in Star Wars, but I just thought it was a little bit lame. I didn't really like that episode as a kid. Nomad droids. This is a tough one. I'm gonna say no. I'm just gonna say D tier. I think. I don't know if we're gonna get any more in the Rancor pit. Lightsaber Lost. It's fine, but it's a little bit forgettable. It's a single episode as well. Heroes on both sides. This is actually really early on chronologically, even though it came out late. This is like in 20 BBY, even though it's like in season 5 or whatever. This takes place at the very start of the Clone Wars. Probably just right after Christoph's, because Ahsoka's there. But it's good because it shows that like the Separatists are not just completely the bad guys. You know, there's like a Separatist side of the story. There's Separatists who want peace. And it also kind of just shows how Palpatine is manipulating both sides, right? Because Dooku acts like he's kind of neutral when he's totally not, right? When they go to the Separatist Senate. If I'm remembering that arc correctly, I might be wrong there. Padawan Lost, B tier. I do like the concept of like this Hunter Island, where the Trandoshans are like hunting Jedi Padawans. It's good for Ahsoka's characterization too, but you know, it's not something that you're going to be like, wow, I really want to rewatch the Clone Wars for that. Ryloth, I like this too, kind of for the same reason as Geonosis, because it's just like, and also this was in season 1, so and you got to give it credit. Like a lot of people say like, man, season 1, you know, it gets a lot better after like seasons 1 and 2, but there were some good arcs in my opinion in seasons 1 and 2, especially this one because it's like showing the horrors of war as much as you can in a kids show, obviously, because you know, like the Separatists are using explicitly, like it's not even like alluded to, like they actually say this in the show that they're using the Twi'leks as human shields basically, and then there's like, you know, all this destroyed villages and the little girl is there, and you know, kind of shows like what the impact of the Clone Wars is on the rest of the galaxy outside of like the glamorous cities of Coruscant, right? So I think that's really good, and it also, that like for later Star Wars content, like why people supported the Empire and stuff, it's like good to have that context because of like how it shows how destructive the Clone Wars were. Wrong Jedi, S tier. I don't think I think that's a no-brainer. Just kind of showing how this episode adds on to the whole Jedi Order being fucked up, basically. It kind of shows some of the reasons why the Jedi Order has kind of gone astray, because they're willing to play politics and ultimately get Ahsoka killed just to play, you know, the Chancellor's game, and they're not even willing to trust her because they're, you know, too busy worrying about how to look right in the eyes of the public and stuff like that if Ahsoka had been guilty, right? So they want to act like, oh, we're totally punishing her, and you know, it blows up in their face. And it all, you know, obviously I mentioned before, really important for Ahsoka's characterization too. This is like the restarting, or I mean, you could even say the start of her journey into like further Star Wars content like Rebels and The Mandalorian and whatever comes after that. Alright, so I think next we're going to just do the Clone Wars movie to get it over with. This one isn't really as offensive as the rest of the D tiers. It's just very boring, and a lot more that came after in regards to the Clone Wars outshines it so much that, you know, it's kind of weird to even call this a movie. It's just like a mediocre arc tied together, you know, like 3 episodes like stitched together, and then they like called it a movie. Yeah, so I just don't think it's that good. The Deserter, B tier. Once again, not something that you're going to come back to, but this is a single episode as well. You're not going to come back to the Clone Wars just to watch this, but it does add some like interesting characterization to the clones, where it like makes Rex question like, how much he should be loyal to the Republic and, you know, question their programming, you know. So that's good. It adds some depth. It makes clones who, you know, this is still pretty early on in the show at this point, so it kind of makes the audience as well as the clones realize like they should have a choice more than they currently do, right? Malevolence, I actually like hate this arc. Oh, I don't know if I should put it in Rancor Pit, but you know, I'm sure lots of people love this one, but for some reason, it's just something in my mind just doesn't like watching this arc. I think maybe it's just like, oh wow, another super weapon in Star Wars. Very cool. You got a ship which shoots a beam that can disable things. Wow, that's very cool. Just kind of unoriginal, so I think that's why I don't like it. Umbara, S tier. This like major characterization for the clones, right? Like this is a very clone focused arc. Like basically Anakin fucks off. There's like no Jedi in this arc besides spoiler alert, the bad guy. So very good. You know, it's kind of got that Vietnam style combat as well. Like it can be dark. Like there's a friendly fire incident in Star Wars The Clone Wars, like because of this arc. That's just awesome, you know. And also it just shows like how some of the Jedi are being led astray. You know, darkness is surrounding the Order, and also just shows how like the clones basically get the short end of the stick. You know, they're basically slaves for the Republic, and like if they get given a commander like this, they basically have to like just die. You know, like they have no choice in their lives. You know, and if they're not under a good commander like Anakin, then they could just get screwed. You know. So definitely that's really good. I like that arc a lot. And also just, I think I mentioned this before, but the combat is really cool in this arc as well. The Disappeared, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to put this in the Rancor Pit because Jar Jar, and I'm not even a big fan of Mace Windu too. He's kind of an asshole, although that's like his character, so it's not really fair to him, but this arc is just weird. Like, it's just weird and not in a good way. You know, this Deception is weird, but it's like, damn, they're trying something new. You know, that's pretty cool. But Disappeared is just like, I don't like it. Blue Shadow Virus, D tier, just boring. Okay, Xylo Beast, high B tier. Just kind of cool that there's like this monster movie in Star Wars. Like this thing rampages around Coruscant and kills a bunch of people, and you know, also just kind of shows Palpatine being a you know, Palpatine's always got that like he loves to be evil aspect, and you see a little bit of that in here. Like he's plotting, he's so sneaky and conniving, and he enjoys it, you know. So this is a B tier, not something you're gonna come back to Star Wars for, but Star Wars The Clone Wars for, but a memorable arc. Alright, so next up is Grievous Intrigue, and this one is kind of tied to the Deserter. This is basically what happens right before the Deserter, but they're not really combined in an arc because they don't really have similar... the story connects them, but they're not really like thematically related. I'm going to say this is C because I don't remember it at all. I had to like look up a Wikipedia article to remember what happened. So if that's the case, it's probably just a C tier. Jedi Crash is a high C tier. Let me see. Themes are a bit simplistic. It's cool that Aelix Secura is there, but she can't really make up for some of the issues with this thing. It's just kind of boring. And the people they meet when they crash, they're pacifist to like a ridiculous amount, and it's just kind of unbelievable. And also, this is just kind of formulaic, like Jedi crash somewhere, meet locals. Locals have to become part of the Clone Wars or something, like same conflict. It happens like 6 times in this show, so a little bit too formulaic. Mortis, A tier. It helps kind of flesh out the Force a lot more, and it also sets up a lot of stuff for later on in Rebels, and probably in a lot more Star Wars content to come as well. And it also just kind of like helps let us learn a little bit more about the Force from the mystical aspect of it, right? And that's always cool to like learn a little bit more about the Force, because often that's like something that is in the background, and to have like a whole arc kind of focused on, you know, Anakin's place in the Force, and you know, they even like kind of foreshadow in a really cool way how he becomes Vader. So I think that's pretty cool. The Gathering, let's just say this is a... I'm gonna say it's a C tier. Okay. Cat and Mouse, C tier. Nothing wrong with it, except it's boring. So I guess there is a lot wrong with it. Okay, so Water War. I kind of like this arc a little bit more than most people do, just for, like, it's kind of unique, you know, water combat. But it is a low B tier. Most people would probably put it in C tier, but I'm going to put it in low B tier. Trespass. I like this episode, but it's low A tier for me. But I just like this episode because I think that the whole, like, I think it's a good message to send, you know, like how the Pantorans and the, I don't know what the big abominable snowman people are, how they made peace. I think it was really, I mean, I guess sort of inspiring, not like super inspiring, but I did like the line where it's like, it's a great sacrifice to die for one's people, but an even greater sacrifice to live for one's people, right? I think that's like this type of stuff that, you know, if you're gonna like if you're gonna show like a giant, make a show about war, it's good to include those themes in here. The soft war is cool. Characterization for Ahsoka, because she's basically alone and having to do this mission. And this mission, the mission itself also puts this in a high A tier, because basically the Republic is sponsoring rebels in a separatist controlled planet, and it's basically like an analogy to how the United States helped like the Taliban and stuff and the Mujahideen in the Cold War against the Soviet Union. There's even, in the final episode of the arc, they like airlift some rocket launchers in order to be able to take down the droid gunships, and that's like literally what the US did. They gave them like Stryker missiles so that they could take down Soviet Hinds. I think they were called Hinds. So like just kind of that parallel, using real life examples to create your story, and kind of introduce like those concepts of like guerrilla warfare, and kind of subtly teach kids about like how the ways these things work, is interesting to say the least, right? Like it's a little bit of history lesson disguised as Star Wars, right? Boba Fett. Okay. I think this is B tier, but it's probably going to be like up here, because being able to see Boba Fett is cool, and like the whole idea of him like trying to kill Mace Windu, like that's also a cool concept. And you know, like and the fact that he sneaks aboard the ship disguised as a clone cadet, because he is, you know, obviously an unaltered clone, but he can pass for a clone. That's a unique idea. The first episode in this arc is probably the best, and the other ones, like R2 Come Home or whatever it was called, not as good. But I still think the concept of this episode warrants a B. Sphere of Influence, C tier. I can barely remember it. It does involve the Pantorans though, which is nice, because I think they're like a uniquely designed species, I guess. But other than that, like not a lot going on. It is nice to see like they're basically doing the same thing as what they did to Naboo, the Trade Federation, that is. They're like blockading the planet and trying to get them to join the CIS, but other than that, kind of forgettable. Bad Batch, let's see, A tier definitely. These guys are cool. They're getting a new season, a new show, I mean. So I'm excited to see what goes and happens with them. And they're also just cool, like the idea of taking like defective clones and like giving them like a personality and making them like the A-team of Clone Wars. It's cool. Sacrifice. Wow, we're getting a lot of A tiers. This one's good because this is also teaching more about the Force. This is basically Yoda finding out, like, he kind of starts to understand what's going to happen at the end of the Clone Wars, and he realizes like he's got to start training himself in order to be ready to join the Living Force, and also to help Luke Skywalker in the future, right? And this was the original end of the Clone Wars, right? And it was a kind of weird end, but not the worst. So it shows the idea that you know, even the Jedi sometimes overestimate themselves, and they have like the wrong ideas when it comes to training with the Force, because Yoda says, like, I have no dark side, right? In one of the episodes of this arc, that's one of his tests, right? And these people who are testing him are like, you think? And then, you know, he has to fight his dark side, and he realizes, like, that he has to accept the darkness within him. And that's the whole thing that the Jedi should have always been doing, right? They're always trying to, like, prevent people from using anything of the dark side, knowing anything about the dark side, and in the end, that just is one of the reasons that Anakin didn't receive the proper counseling he needed not to go to the dark side. So it is cool to have that kind of brought up in this arc as a theme. Alright, so Shadow Warrior, I'm just going to say this is D tier because it's ridiculous that the Gungans, of all people, should be able to subdue General Grievous. And it's even crazier, but not totally unbelievable, that once Grievous is captured, they actually trade him to Dooku just for Anakin. You would think that after that, that Padme would, like, literally be expelled from the Senate immediately, but she's not, so that's a little bit unbelievable. Rookies, this one in a lot of other tier lists is included in other arcs, but this is just a single episode. And this is the episode where there's that outpost, and Domino Squad, you know, basically has to destroy it in order to signal the Republic that an attack on Kamino is coming. And a lot of people will probably remember this episode because it's in season 1, so there's probably going to be a lot of nostalgia towards it. And, you know, it's not one of the most amazing episodes, but it's definitely a B tier. Pretty memorable, especially with the sacrifice of Heavy at the end. That was really cool. You know, we don't take prisoners, and then just blows up the station. And that's not the exact line, but you get the idea. Hold it right there. If you haven't subscribed to my channel and you've been enjoying the video so far, I'd really appreciate it if you went down there and hit that like button and hit that subscribe button. It gives me a dopamine rush, and it tells me that I am making good content. Please subscribe now. Scipio arc, this is basically where Palpatine takes control of the banks. In the grand scheme of the Clone Wars, it adds to how Palpatine was able to kind of form the Empire, but not the best arc. I'm kind of gonna put it in C because I don't really think about it that much when I think about the Clone Wars. It's not bad though. I'm gonna put it at a high C. Night Sisters, I'm gonna put this as a B tier. This is where Savage Opress is created. I've never really liked Savage that much, so I'm just gonna put this in B tier. It's still a good arc though. It's just not really my big thing. Oh, this is definitely B. Rancor Pit material. This is the one where this is Bombad General, which is where Jar Jar disguises himself as a Jedi and rescues Padme. And everybody hates that episode, including me, so even though maybe some of the other episodes in this arc redeem it a little bit, it's still Rancor Pit material. Okay, so Assassins. So this is the one where Ahsoka basically tries to prevent Padme from being assassinated, hence the name, by Aura Singh. Aura Singh is always cool to see, but not really the best bounty hunter in my opinion, in terms of just like my liking her that much, but yeah, it's alright. I'm gonna say this is a C tier. Cool to see like Ahsoka and Padme were working together without Anakin there for once, but you know, otherwise not a lot happening in this. It's just a single episode, so. Alright, let's do some Maul arcs here. So we're gonna put Revenge in A tier, high A tier though. Just because it's cool, you know, bringing back Maul. I was not really a fan of bringing back Maul. I think bringing back characters is generally a bad idea. But they, in the end, handled it pretty well, in my opinion. But just the idea of Maul here, you know, they find him, and he's, like, attached to this, like, spider robot body. Just very freaky. I'm glad they didn't end up staying with that. And, they did a really good job at executing Maul as well. So, like, in terms of his voice actor, it's fucking awesome. He's like, the voice is just so iconic. They need to use that voice for any future Maul stuff. And this episode is also pretty cool, just like how he's revived by the Night Sisters, basically, and kind of starts his campaign of revenge against Obi-Wan. It's cool. And then definitely S tier is Season 5 Mandalore. I don't know a better name for this, so I just called it that. Satine being killed, that just adds a lot of stakes. Like, usually people, you know, Clone Wars does have a lot of deaths, but usually they're not going to kill a minor character like that who's somewhat important. But they did it, and they just stabbed her on screen. You know, it was crazy. This is the arc where they decapitated that guy when Maul takes control of Mandalore, right? Definitely a pretty serious arc, and I'm glad that they did this stuff. Oh, and of course, the best thing, they get the Emperor fighting in this arc. Remember, you know, Palpatine realizes that Maul's around, and he's like, "All right, time." And you see him like get out of his chair, and he's like, "Get my shuttle ready." And you know, he's like fighting. You know, he ends up fighting with Maul and Oppress, and just like he's like laughing. He's like shooting lightning. You know, he's being the little shit he is. Like, he just loves being evil, and I love watching him love being evil. So this definitely is an S tier arc. All right, the Citadel. I'm just gonna say this is B tier. We get to see Tarkin in here. Tarkin and Ahsoka butt heads a little bit. It's a prison escape. Pretty simple concept, but I think it's executed pretty well. Okay, so the Mandalore plot. I'm gonna say this is A tier. Just gonna plop it right there. And this one's good because it kind of adds some more characterization to Obi-Wan, and it kind of expands on why the Order, the Jedi Order, once again, is flawed. So, you know, it kind of shows that Obi-Wan also struggles with the Jedi Code, because he, just kind of like Anakin in the prequels, once had a love interest, which is Satine, and, you know, that he struggled with his feelings for her, as well as his feelings for, you know, loyalty to the Jedi Code. So it's good to kind of add on that, and it kind of adds on to the not necessarily the retconning, but like expansion that the Clone Wars had to the prequels, right? Because, for example, the prequels always kind of portray Anakin as falling from the righteous Jedi Code, which doesn't really make sense, because when most people watch the prequels, they can kind of understand, like, why shouldn't Anakin be able to love Padme, you know? And so kind of part of what the Clone Wars did was kind of explain, like, no, even though the movies kind of portrayed the Jedi Code as good, in reality, it's kind of a flawed thing in itself, right? So this arc, by showing how Obi-Wan struggles with it, kind of accentuates that theme, because it shows that, you know, Anakin isn't the only Jedi that struggles with his following of the code. All right, let's try to speed through the last of these arcs here, and single episodes. A lot of these are single episodes. So ARC Troopers, A tier. The fighting in Kamino is good. Just very good action in that episode. Bounty Hunters, B tier. Not bad, not amazing, but introducing Hondo, sorry. Not Holdo, that's not a good character. I was about to say Hondo he's a funny character. So it's cool that they're introduced him here. That's another single episode. Kidnapped, I'm going to say A tier, because it shows basically a bunch of Togrutas, I think that's what they're called. Basically Ahsoka's species. They're kidnapped, and it's basically they're put into slavery, which is, you know, an interesting topic to cover in a kids show. And, you know, Clone Wars should definitely be commended for covering topics like that. You know, it just goes to show, like, part of the reason the Republic is shit and was going to fall and it was corrupt was because, you know, the Separatists are taking people into slavery, and the Republic doesn't really do much about it. Slavery also existed, you know, during the prequels in Hutt space, and the Republic didn't give a shit, basically. So kind of just shows some of the bad side of the Republic. Next up here, Holocron Crisis. No, fucking Hostage Crisis. I'm getting tired from speaking. Hostage Crisis is a... Ooh, this is tough between B and C. Honestly, I'm going to say this is C, because I remember the first episode of this arc, but literally the second one I had to look up to figure out what happened, and it was the Hunt for Zero. And that one was kind of meh. So, Holocron Heist... I'm just going to put it in B tier. Seeing Cad Bane is cool, but I think the rest of this arc, while good, you know, not too memorable for me at least, so it's going to be a low B tier. So that's the end of that tier list. Here's the final result on screen right now. If you guys make your own, feel free to link it in the description. I'd like to see what you guys think. I'd like to see what you guys think I did wrong, what I did right, and I just love talking about the Clone Wars. It's probably one of my favorite pieces of Star Wars content that's been produced in like the last decade, so I always just like making videos talking about it. I'm probably going to do some more in the future, like talking about the Bad Batch, which is kind of like Clone Wars, but it's going to be in the Empire period, like the early Empire period, so I'm really excited for that. And yeah, I'm just going to end this video here so that I stop rambling, and because I'm tired of recording. I'll see you guys later. Bye.